My husband stood in the middle of our living room, pointed at the front door, and said, "This house is mine. If you don't like how I run it, leave." He said it in front of his mother, in front of his younger sister, in front of the woman he called his business advisor, though her hand had been resting on his shoulder like she had already chosen my side of the bed. And he said it while I was holding a basket of laundry I had just folded for a home he believed I had no claim to. For a moment, nobody moved. The television was still playing softly in the background. Rain tapped against the windows. The dining table was covered with unpaid bills, contractor invoices, grocery receipts, and the school forms I had been filling out for his sister's son, because apparently I was good enough to manage everyone's emergencies, but not good enough to be respected in my own living room. My name is Clara Bennett. For 9 years, I was Clara Monroe. And on that night, in that living room, I learned that a man can live under a roof, built by a woman's sacrifice, and still point at the door, like kindness came from his pockets. My husband, Daniel Monroe, looked proud when he said it. Not angry enough to lose control, not embarrassed, proud, like he had finally said the sentence he had been practicing for months. His mother, Patricia, sat on the cream sofa with her legs crossed, wearing the pearl earrings I had bought her for Christmas. She nodded slowly, as if her son had just delivered a wise judgment. His sister, Elaine, looked down at her phone and pretended not to enjoy it. And the woman beside him, Bianca Hale, smiled with one corner of her mouth. Bianca was tall, polished, and expensive-looking, in a way that seemed designed to make other women feel unfinished. She had come into Daniel's life 6 months earlier as a branding consultant for his real estate company. Then she became his late-night meeting partner, then his dinner companion, then the woman whose perfume stayed in his car longer than I did. She looked at me that night like I was a tenant refusing eviction. Daniel adjusted his watch. A watch I had paid for, by the way. During the year, he said he needed to look the part to attract investors. "Clara," he said, "I'm tired of your attitude." "My attitude?" "Yes. You question everything. You make my mother uncomfortable. You act like you own this place." I looked around the room. The gray sectional I picked out after 3 months of saving. The bookshelves I stained myself. The curtains I hemmed because the custom ones were too expensive during the early years. The kitchen beyond the archway where I had cooked meals while Daniel sat at the table promising that one day all the struggle would be worth it. I turned back to him. "I act like I live here." Patricia clicked her tongue. "That is the problem with modern women. You confuse living somewhere with owning it." The words entered me slowly. Modern women. As if women asking for respect were a new disease. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Mom is right. This house is in my name." Bianca looked delighted by that. I placed the laundry basket on the chair. "Is that what you think?" He laughed. "What do you mean, is that what I think? I signed the mortgage papers." "Yes," I said quietly. "You signed some papers." His smile faded a little. Not much, but enough. Patricia leaned forward. "Clara, do not try to twist things. Daniel bought this home. He provided. He carried you." I stared at her. Carried me? The man whose first down payment came from money I received after my grandmother died. The man whose credit score was too damaged to qualify a loan until I spent 2 years quietly clearing old debts he had hidden from me. The man whose name went on the mortgage because his business advisor at the time said it would be cleaner for future financing if the property sat under Monroe Holdings. The man whose company had nearly collapsed twice before I used my nursing income, my overtime, my wedding jewelry, and finally my grandmother's inheritance to keep it breathing. He carried me? I looked at Daniel. "Tell your mother how the down payment was made." His eyes hardened. "Don't start." "No, Daniel. She said you carried me. Tell her what money opened the door." Elaine looked up from her phone. Bianca's smile thinned. Patricia waved her hand. "Every wife contributes small things. That does not make the house hers. Small things. A lifetime of women's sacrifice can disappear under that phrase." Daniel stepped closer. "I said don't start. You started when you told me to leave my home." He pointed again toward the door. "Then prove it is yours." The room went quiet. Not because he had made a strong point. Because he had made a dangerous one without knowing it. I held his gaze. "Are you sure you want that?" He laughed. "Clara, please. You keep receipts for groceries and think that makes you powerful." I did not answer. My silence annoyed him. It always did. He liked me soft, but not silent. Helpful, but not watchful. Loyal, but not informed. Then the doorbell rang. One sharp sound through the house. Everyone turned. Daniel frowned. "Who is that?" I looked at the clock. 8:15 p.m. Exactly on time. I walked to the door. Daniel followed. "Clara, who is at my door?" I opened it. A woman stood on the porch under a black umbrella, wearing a navy suit and holding a leather folder against her chest. Behind her was a man with a briefcase and another with a document tube. Their shoes were wet from the rain. She smiled politely. "Mrs. Bennett?" Daniel's face tightened at my maiden name. "Yes," I said. "I'm attorney Vivian Hart. We spoke earlier." I stepped aside. "Please come in." Daniel's voice sharpened. "Clara, what is this?" Vivian entered, closed her umbrella, and looked around the living room calmly. Good lawyers have a way of making every room feel smaller. She nodded at Daniel. "Mr. Monroe." He frowned. "Who are you?" "Clara's attorney." Patricia gasped. "Attorney?" Bianca crossed her arms. Daniel looked at me like I had embarrassed him in public, though we were still inside the house he had just tried to throw me out of. "What did you do?" he asked. I smiled. "Exactly what you asked." He blinked. I proved it. Vivian opened the leather folder. "Mr. Monroe, I am here to deliver formal notice regarding the beneficial ownership, trust interest, and financial claims attached to this property." Daniel laughed once. "Beneficial ownership? This is ridiculous." Vivian did not smile. "No, Mr. Monroe. It is documented." Patricia stood. "Daniel, do not entertain this." Vivian turned slightly toward her. "Mrs. Monroe, you may want to sit down. Some of these documents include transfers made to your personal accounts from funds originating with my client." Patricia froze. Elaine slowly lowered her phone. Bianca stopped smiling completely. Daniel looked at me. "What have you done?" I did not raise my voice. "I stopped letting you call my sacrifice your success." Vivian placed the first set of papers on the coffee table. According to the original purchase structure, the initial down payment for this property came from Clara Bennett's separate inheritance account. The mortgage was placed under Monroe Holdings for business financing purposes, but a signed private agreement dated 3 days before closing acknowledges Clara Bennett as the primary beneficial owner of the home until repayment or title correction. Daniel's face went pale. He remembered. Of course he remembered. He had just believed I did not. Patricia looked confused. "What agreement?" Vivian continued. "The document bears your son's signature, the signature of the previous attorney, and a notary stamp." Daniel stepped forward. "That was old paperwork. It doesn't mean anything now." Vivian looked at him over her glasses. "Old paperwork is still paperwork." Bianca whispered. "Daniel?" He did not look at her. Vivian removed another page. "In addition, there are documented transfers from Mrs. Bennett's personal accounts into mortgage payments, repairs, taxes, insurance, and emergency business support tied to Monroe Holdings. We are prepared to pursue equitable relief, title correction, repayment, and injunction against sale, transfer, encumbrance, or unauthorized occupancy." The words moved through the room like smoke. Slow, thick, impossible to ignore. Daniel's face shifted from shock to anger. "You planned this?" I looked at him. "No, you did. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if you have ever been told to leave something you helped build with your own hands, stay with this story. Because sometimes the person saying, 'This house is mine,' has forgotten the lawyer still has the paper that says otherwise. I met Daniel Monroe when I was 28, in the waiting area of a community health clinic where I worked as a nurse supervisor. He was not rich then. He was charming, ambitious, and tired in a way that made me want to believe he only needed one person to stand beside him before life opened. He came in with his mother, Patricia, who had high blood pressure and a personality strong enough to raise it in everyone else. Daniel handled her gently. He filled her forms, held her purse, asked questions, called her mama in a voice so soft that I thought, this is a good man. Sometimes what we admire in a man's treatment of his mother becomes the first place we should look for warning signs. Not because loving a mother is wrong, but because some men never separate devotion from obedience. Daniel returned to the clinic 2 weeks later with flowers. Not expensive ones. A simple bouquet from the corner market. He said, "My mother says you saved her life by scolding her into taking her medication." I did not scold. You did. Politely. That's dangerous. I laughed. That laugh gave him courage. We started talking. Then meeting for coffee. Then dinner. He told me he had a small real estate investment company that had been bruised badly by one bad partnership and one worse loan. He said he wanted to build affordable homes, then later luxury developments, then one day mixed-use communities with dignity. Dignity. That word caught me. I was a nurse. I understood dignity. I had seen people lose it in waiting rooms, hospital beds, billing offices, and family arguments where money decided who mattered. Daniel spoke like a man who wanted to build more than wealth. I loved that. Or I loved the version of him that knew how to say it. My life before him had been steady but lonely. My parents died young. I was raised mostly by my grandmother, Josephine Bennett, who cleaned offices at night and sold homemade pastries during the day. She taught me that money was not everything, but having none gave other people too much permission. When she died, she left me a small inheritance. Not mansion money, not luxury money, but safety money. Enough for a deposit on a modest home, enough for an emergency, enough to breathe. She wrote me a letter with it. "Clara, use this money for a roof that no one can hold over your head. Love is sweet, but paper is what stands up in court." I smiled when I read it. I thought Grandma was being dramatic. Years later, I would wish she could sit beside Vivian Hart and take a bow. Daniel and I married after 2 years. At the time, his business was struggling but alive. He had one office, 3 employees, and more confidence than contracts. I still worked full-time at the clinic, sometimes extra shifts, because nurses learn early that love does not pay pharmacy bills unless someone works. The house came into our lives because Daniel found it first. A 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood with old trees, a wide porch, large windows, and a kitchen full of morning light. It was beautiful. Not enormous. Not flashy. Just solid. Warm. The kind of house where you could imagine children, aging, Sunday rice, Christmas lights, rainy afternoons, and peace. Daniel walked through it with me and said, "This is where our life begins." I believed him. The problem was money. Daniel's credit was damaged from the failed partnership. His business debt made banks nervous. My credit was strong, but he insisted that because he was building Monroe Holdings, the home should be structured strategically. His attorney at the time, Mr. Alan Pierce, suggested the mortgage could be handled through Daniel's business structure, with me contributing the down payment as a documented private equity interest until title correction later. I did not like it. My grandmother's letter whispered in my head. Roof, paper, court. I told Daniel I would only contribute if my interest was written clearly. He looked hurt. "Clara, you don't trust me?" "I trust paper." He laughed then and kissed my forehead. "Fine. We'll write whatever makes you feel safe. Whatever makes you feel safe." He said it like my safety was a cute habit. But he signed. I signed. The document was notarized. Copies were made. I kept mine in a folder labeled insurance because sometimes women name things gently so nobody knows how sharp they are. We moved in 6 weeks later. For the first year, we were happy. I painted the guest room yellow. Daniel repaired the back fence badly, then paid someone to fix his fixing. Patricia visited every Sunday and commented on every curtain. I hosted dinners. Daniel worked late. I worked longer. Bills were tight, but we managed. Then Monroe Holdings needed money. Always money. A client delayed payment. A contractor sued. A land option required a deposit. A permit issue created legal costs. Every crisis came wrapped in the same sentence. Clara, just until the next deal closes. I contributed because we were married, because we were building, because the house felt like ours, even though the paperwork was complicated. Because I loved him. Love makes giving feel noble until giving becomes expected. I paid mortgage installments during lean months. I covered insurance, property taxes, the roof repair, the kitchen leak, Patricia's medical bills, Elaine's son's school fees when she cried at my dining table, Daniel's car note when he said arriving in an old sedan hurt investor confidence. I did not keep receipts to punish anyone. I kept them because Grandma taught me that paper is memory that cannot be bullied. For years, Daniel thanked me, then less, then not at all. Gratitude does not always disappear suddenly. Sometimes it gets replaced by comfort. Then comfort becomes entitlement. Then entitlement becomes history rewritten out loud. By year 5, Monroe Holdings had grown. Daniel was invited to panels. Real estate magazines called him a builder with heart. He moved into bigger deals, wore better suits, spoke more carefully, stopped introducing me as the woman who believed in me, and started saying, my wife prefers healthcare, prefers. As if I had not become unofficial accountant, emotional manager, house financier, family nurse, emergency payer, and quiet strategist. When people asked how he got through the early years, he smiled and said, faith and discipline. Faith and discipline wore my shoes. Then Bianca arrived. Bianca Hale came from one of those families that knew how to make money look inherited even when it was borrowed. She worked in brand strategy for developers and positioned herself as someone who could take Daniel from successful local businessman to national name. She was good. I will not lie. She understood image. She taught him how to speak in interviews, dress for investors, host private dinners, charm bankers, and make every project sound like a movement. She also understood how to make a wife feel like old furniture. At first, she was polite. Clara, you must be so proud. Then dismissive. Healthcare is such a noble world. I don't know how you handle all that. Bodily stuff. Then possessive. Daniel and I were saying the brand needs a cleaner domestic narrative. A cleaner domestic narrative. I asked Daniel what that meant. He said, she just means we need privacy. What does our marriage have to do with branding? He looked tired. Everything has to do with branding at this level. At this level. The phrase became his new home. At this level, my dresses were too simple. At this level, Patricia needed to host more. At this level, Bianca needed access to the house for donor dinners. At this level, I should stop working so many clinic shifts because it made him look like he couldn't provide. I asked, are you providing? His face changed. What is that supposed to mean? It means my salary still pays things your image forgets. He did not speak to me for 2 days. Patricia grew bolder once Bianca arrived. She had always believed Daniel deserved someone grander, but now Grander was sitting at my table pretending to advise the company while looking at my walls. One Sunday, Patricia said, a man like Daniel needs a wife who can represent the house properly. I looked at her. This house? Yes. The one I helped buy? She smiled tightly. Helped is doing a lot of work in that sentence. I nearly told her everything. The agreement, the down payment, the years of payments, the hidden truth beneath her son's pride. But something stopped me. Not fear, instinct. When people are already rewriting history, do not hand them the pen you use to prove the truth. Instead, I called Vivian Hart. I had met Vivian through a patient's daughter, a lawyer who handled property disputes and marital financial claims. I did not hire her immediately. At first, I only asked questions. What happens if someone contributes separate inheritance to a house titled under a spouse's company? Do you have documents? She asked. Yes. Good. That word carried more comfort than Daniel had given me in months. I started gathering receipts, transfers, emails, the private agreement, texts where Daniel thanked me for specific payments, loan records, bank statements, property tax confirmations, contractor invoices paid from my account. I did not know what I was preparing for. Maybe divorce, maybe protection, maybe the day Daniel would finally say something foolish enough to turn my sadness into action. That day came with Bianca in my living room. It began over dinner plans. Daniel wanted to host investors at the house. I said no, not because of the investors, because Bianca wanted to redesign the living room for better optics, and Patricia had already told a caterer to remove family photos from the hallway because personal clutter distracts important people. Personal clutter. Photos of my grandmother, our wedding, the clinic team, Elaine's child, life. I said no. Daniel said I was being difficult. Patricia said I did not understand opportunity. Bianca said, Clara, with respect, this home is part of Daniel's brand. I turned to her. With respect, Bianca, this home is not part of your job. Daniel stood. Do not speak to her that way. Something in me cooled. Interesting. What? You have more energy defending her from tone than defending me from disrespect. Patricia gasped. Elaine whispered, Oh Lord. Bianca looked wounded, beautifully. Daniel stepped closer. You are jealous and insecure. No. I am tired of women sitting in my home deciding how small I should be inside it. That was when he said it. This house is mine. If you don't like how I run it, leave. He thought the sentence ended the argument. Instead, it opened the door for Vivian. Now she stood in that same living room, placing documents on the coffee table like stones in a foundation. Daniel stared at the papers. Patricia sat down slowly. Elaine's face had gone pale. Bianca looked between Daniel and me, calculating how much of his shine was actually mine. Vivian continued. Mr. Monroe, we are prepared to file tomorrow morning unless you agree tonight to certain temporary protections. Daniel's laugh was bitter. You come into my house at night and threaten me? Vivian glanced at me, then at him. Again, ownership is one of the issues in dispute. Bianca spoke for the first time. Daniel, is any of this true? He snapped. Stay out of it. Wrong answer. Her face hardened. Maybe Bianca did not mind being the other woman, but she minded being attached to a man whose assets were legally messy. Patricia pointed at me. You are trying to destroy my son. I looked at her. No, Patricia. I am trying to stop him from destroying the truth. Elaine whispered. Clara, did you really pay all that? I looked at her. I paid your son's school balance twice. Her eyes filled. She knew. Maybe not everything. Enough. Daniel picked up one document and threw it back onto the table. This agreement is outdated. We're married. Money moves around. Vivian nodded. Exactly why accounting exists. His face darkened. You think a court will give her my company's house? Vivian's voice stayed calm. I think a court will ask why your company held title to a marital residence purchased with her separate inheritance, maintained with her personal funds, and acknowledged privately as hers pending title correction. Bianca stepped backward. You told me the property was clean. Daniel looked at her sharply. It is. Vivian smiled slightly. That remains to be seen. For the first time that night, Daniel looked afraid. Not heartbroken, not sorry. Afraid. That told me more than all his words. Vivian placed another paper down. These temporary terms are simple. You will not sell, transfer, refinance, lease, pledge, occupy with third parties, or alter the property without Clara's written consent. You will preserve all financial records. You will cease instructing Mrs. Bennett to leave the property. You will communicate through counsel regarding ownership matters. Patricia exploded. Mrs. Bennett? Her name is Monroe. I turned to her. Not for long. The room stopped. Daniel looked at me. What does that mean? It means I am done. His mouth opened, but no words came. I had imagined this moment many times. I thought I would cry, shake, collapse, beg for the old Daniel to return. Instead, I felt steady, sad, but steady. Daniel stepped toward me. "Clara, don't make emotional decisions." I almost smiled. "Tonight you told me to leave. Now divorce is emotional?" He lowered his voice. "We can talk." "We did. You said the house was yours." He rubbed his forehead. "You pushed me." "No, I documented you." Vivian placed a final envelope on the table. "Mr. Monroe, this is a preservation letter. My office will be filing if necessary. I suggest you retain independent counsel immediately." Bianca picked up her purse. Daniel turned. "Where are you going?" She looked at him like he had become a liability in human form. "I need to review my professional exposure." "That was Bianca, for I am not going down with your messy assets." She left. Patricia looked betrayed. Elaine remained silent. Daniel watched Bianca walk out, and that small glance sealed something for me. Even while his marriage was collapsing, he was measuring her reaction. I went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. The guest room became mine that night because I could not sleep in the bed where I had spent years shrinking beside him. I heard voices downstairs. Patricia crying. Daniel making calls. Elaine leaving quietly. Vivian stayed in the house until midnight, sitting with me in the guest room while I gathered documents into a fireproof box. "Are you safe here tonight?" she asked. "Yes." "You can leave if you want." I looked around. "No, that is the habit I'm breaking." She nodded. "Good." The legal fight began the next morning. Daniel hired a loud attorney. Loud attorneys are not always good attorneys, but frighten men like volume because it sounds like strength. They argued that the house belonged to Monroe Holdings. Vivian argued beneficial ownership, equitable interest, marital misuse, and unjust enrichment. They argued I was a supportive wife making a vindictive claim. Vivian produced bank transfers. They argued the private agreement was informal. Vivian produced the notary record. They argued my payments were gifts. Vivian produced texts from Daniel saying, "I know I owe you for this house. Once the Springwell deal closes, we'll correct everything." And, "Thank you for covering the tax bill. I know this place is really yours in every way that matters." Paper remembers what pride forgets. Daniel tried calling me directly. I ignored him. Patricia sent long messages about family, forgiveness, betrayal, and how my grandmother would be ashamed. That one made me angry enough to respond once. "My grandmother is the reason I kept the papers." Then I blocked her. Elaine sent one message. "I'm sorry. I didn't know everything. Thank you for helping my son." I cried when I read that. Not everyone who benefits from your silence is equally guilty. But everyone has a responsibility once truth arrives. Bianca disappeared from Daniel's life faster than smoke. Her consulting contract ended mutually. The investor dinner never happened. Rumors spread through his business circle that his flagship home, the one featured in lifestyle magazines as part of his founder story, was under ownership dispute. Founder story, another phrase I had learned to distrust. The mediation took place 4 months later. Daniel looked tired when I walked in. Thinner. Still handsome. Still Daniel. That hurt. We often want people who hurt us to look like monsters. It makes grief simpler. But Daniel looked like the man I once loved, wearing the consequences of becoming someone else. He did not greet me. I did not greet him. Vivian sat beside me. His lawyer began with settlement numbers that insulted everyone at the table. Vivian let him finish. Then she opened our binder. I loved that binder. Color-coded, numbered tabs. Every sacrifice placed where no one could call it emotion. Tab 1, Inheritance Transfer. Tab 2, Private Agreement. Tab 3, Mortgage Payments. Tab 4, Repairs. Tab 5, Taxes and Insurance. Tab 6, Monroe Holdings Support Tied to Property. Tab 7, Communications. Tab 8, Proposed Title Correction. By lunch, Daniel's lawyer had stopped performing. By late afternoon, Daniel requested a private conversation with attorneys present. We agreed. He looked at me across the small conference table. "Clara," he said, "I was angry that night." "Yes." "I said things I shouldn't have." "Yes." He swallowed. "I know you contributed." I almost laughed. "Contributed?" Vivian touched her pen. Daniel saw it. He corrected himself. "You paid for the beginning. More than that. You kept us afloat." I waited. I should have corrected the title years ago. "Yes." "I didn't because—" He stopped. "Because what?" His face tightened. "Because once the company grew, the house became part of my image." There it was. Not confusion. Not forgetfulness. Image. "You mean my house made you look successful?" "Yes." "And admitting the truth would make you look supported." He closed his eyes. "Yes." The honesty was ugly. Useful, but ugly. "I need to ask you something," I said. He opened his eyes. "If Bianca had not left, would you be apologizing?" His face shifted. That was answer enough. But he said, "I don't know." I appreciated that more than a lie. The settlement took another month. In the end, the title was corrected. The house became legally mine. Daniel received credit for certain documented mortgage portions he had paid, offset against money he owed me from other support. Monroe Holdings released all claims. He signed a written acknowledgement of my separate inheritance contribution and ownership interest. The divorce moved separately. Cleanly. Not painlessly. Cleanly. The day the corrected deed arrived, I sat at the kitchen table alone. The same table where Patricia had once judged my curtains. The same table where I had paid bills while Daniel slept. The same table where I had folded school forms for Elaine's son. I read my name 3 times. Clara Bennett, owner, not helper, not supportive wife, not contributor, owner. Then I placed my grandmother's letter beside the deed. Love is sweet, but paper is what stands up in court. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. The house changed after Daniel left, not physically at first, emotionally. Rooms breathe differently after disrespect moves out. I painted the living room a soft green because Daniel had always preferred gray. I replaced the dining table with a round one because I no longer wanted a head of the table. I turned the room Bianca wanted to stage for investors into a library and filled it with books, plants, and a large framed photo of my grandmother smiling in her church hat. I hosted my clinic friends first. Nurses know how to bless a house. They brought food, loud laughter, candles, gossip, prayers, and one extremely ugly vase they insisted had character. I kept it. Elaine visited after 6 months. Alone. She brought her son Milo, who hugged me around the waist and asked if Uncle Daniel was in trouble. Elaine looked mortified. I knelt and said, "Uncle Daniel is learning about consequences." Milo nodded seriously. "My teacher says consequences help us grow." Smart child. Elaine apologized properly. Not perfectly, properly. "For letting you carry so much," she said. "For accepting help without asking what it cost. For staying quiet when Mom spoke down to you. For not seeing that Daniel was using your kindness." I hugged her. Some relationships survive truth because they do not fight it. Patricia did not apologize. Not for a long time. She sent messages through relatives. Called me greedy. Called me disrespectful. Said a house should follow the husband's name. Said women today destroy families over property. I let her talk. Her words no longer had keys. Daniel apologized 1 year later. Not because he wanted the house back. That was impossible now. Not because Bianca returned. She had moved on to another developer with cleaner paperwork. Daniel apologized because his world had become smaller, and maybe in that smaller room, truth finally had space to sit. He asked to meet at a cafe. I almost said no. Then Vivian said, "Closure is optional, not mandatory. Choose based on your peace, not his need." I chose to go. He looked older, less shiny. He stood when I arrived. "Clara." "Daniel." We sat. He did not order for me. That was new. He folded his hands. I thought success meant nobody could see who helped me. I looked at him. That is a sad definition. I know. Do you? He nodded slowly. I do now. I was ashamed that you funded the start. I was ashamed that your inheritance did what my pride couldn't. I loved the house because it made me look like the man I wanted people to believe I was. And me? He swallowed. You became evidence against the myth. The sentence was honest enough to hurt both of us. I hated you for that, he whispered. My chest tightened. There it was. The thing beneath the thing. I know, I said. His eyes filled. I am sorry. For the house. For Bianca. For my mother. For telling you to leave. For making you feel like a guest in the home you made possible. For letting everyone call me provider while you quietly provided. I looked out the window. Cars passed. A woman walked a dog. Life continued with rude confidence. I hear you, I said. He nodded. Can you forgive me? I breathed slowly. Not today. He closed his eyes, but he did not argue. Good. That does not mean never, I said. It means forgiveness is not the last payment I owe you. He cried then. Quietly. I let him. There is mercy in not rescuing people from the pain of what they did. Years passed. The house became fully mine in every way. My name on the deed. My choices in the rooms. My peace in the walls. My grandmother's roses in the backyard. Yes, roses. I planted them myself, though I killed 2 bushes before learning the soil needed help. My neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, taught me. She was 74 and believed every problem could be solved with compost, patience, or strong coffee. I also started a small legal education project with Vivian for women in caregiving professions. Nurses, home health aides, teachers, social workers, women who often spent their lives helping others while failing to document themselves. We held workshops in my living room. Know what you sign. Keep proof of payments. Do not put inheritance into shared property without written protection. Understand title. Understand trusts. Understand marital property. Do not let love shame you out of records. At the first workshop, a young nurse raised her hand and said, "But won't asking for paperwork make him think I don't trust him?" Vivian answered before I could. The right person will want you protected. The wrong person will want you exposed. The room went silent. Women wrote that down. I did too. Because even after everything, I was still learning. The house that Daniel claimed as his became a place where women learned not to disappear into someone else's story. That felt like justice. Not loud justice. Better. Useful justice. Patricia came to one workshop by accident. Elaine brought her. I did not know until they arrived. For a moment, seeing her at my door made the old tightness return. But then I remembered, my door. I chose to let her in. She sat in the back, stiff, purse on her lap, looking offended by every legal term that gave women power. Halfway through, Vivian explained separate inheritance and property agreements. Patricia's face changed. Not fully. A little. After the workshop, she stood near the hallway, avoiding my eyes the way guilty people do when pride has not finished fighting. Finally, she said, "I did not know Daniel signed that agreement." I looked at her. Would it have mattered? She swallowed. The truth was no. We both knew it. I raised him to believe a man's image mattered too much, she said. That surprised me. He chose his actions, I replied. Yes, she said, but I fed the pride that made them easier. It was not a full apology, but it was the first honest sentence she had ever given me. I nodded. I hear you. She looked around the living room. The green walls, the round table, the women leaving with folders, the ugly vase on the shelf. It looks different. It is different. No, she said softly. You are. I smiled. Yes. She never became my mother. I did not need her to. But after that day, she stopped attacking me. That was enough. Daniel never remarried while I knew of him. Not that I watched closely. I heard Monroe Holdings struggled for a while after the investor fallout, then stabilized smaller. He sold the showy office, downsized the staff, rebuilt slowly, maybe honestly, maybe not. That became his life, not mine. My life grew inside the house, not in the way my younger self expected. No perfect marriage, no children running down the stairs, no Daniel repairing fences badly while I laughed. I grieved those imagined things. People rarely talk about grieving a future that never happened, but I did. I cried in the yellow guest room once because it had been painted for a baby we never had. I cried packing away wedding gifts. I cried when the first winter came and I had to hang Christmas lights alone. Then I learned new rituals. Saturday coffee on the porch, Sunday dinners with friends, workshops once a month, roses in spring, music while cleaning, books on rainy nights, silence that did not punish me, peace that did not ask me to earn it. One evening, I found the old laundry basket from that night in the storage closet, the same one I had been holding when Daniel told me to leave. It was cracked at one handle. I almost threw it away. Then I carried it to the laundry room, filled it with old papers I no longer needed, and took it outside for recycling. It sounds small, but some objects hold the memory of who you were when someone tried to reduce you. Letting them go can feel like opening a window. My husband said, "This house is mine." Then the lawyer arrived with papers that changed everything. But the papers did not create the truth. They revealed it. The truth had been there in every transfer, every late shift, every repaired roof, every paid tax bill, every hidden agreement, every sacrifice he accepted and later renamed. That is why records matter. Not because love should be cold, because memory becomes fragile when power starts editing it. A receipt can protect a woman when a room full of people tries to call her a liar. A signature can speak when your voice shakes. A deed can turn the sentence, "Get out," into evidence. If you are listening and you have helped build a house, a business, a life, a dream, or a family system that now treats you like an outsider, hear me clearly. Know what is in writing. Know whose name is on the deed. Know where your money went. Know what you signed. Know what you are owed. Do not be embarrassed to ask questions. Do not let anyone tell you paperwork ruins love. Love that depends on your legal ignorance is not love. It is access. Do not let a husband, wife, parent, sibling, child, or in-law convince you that your contribution becomes invisible because it was given quietly. Quiet does not mean free. Support does not mean surrender. Marriage does not mean memory loss. And a home is not truly shared if one person can point at the door and erase the other with a sentence. Daniel thought the house was his because his name had been placed where my money could not be seen. Patricia thought the house was his because she believed sons should own what wives maintain. Bianca thought the house was part of a brand because she had never touched the receipts. But my grandmother knew better. Love is sweet. Paper stands. And on the night my husband tried to throw me out, Paper walked through the door wearing a navy suit and carrying everything he hoped I had forgotten. Today, the house is quiet. Green walls, round table, roses outside. Ugly vase on the shelf, my grandmother's photo in the library, a folder in the safe, a deed with my name on it. And every time I unlock the front door, I remember the woman holding laundry while everyone waited for her to shrink. I wish I could go back and tell her one thing. Do not drop your voice. Do not drop your records. Do not drop yourself. The house is not his just because he says it louder. Wait for the doorbell. The lawyer is coming.